few years back, I got a tattoo. Three of my favorite manga panels. Everyone immediately recognizes Naruto and Gojo, but then there's that one panel that always leaves everyone scratching their heads. And then I have to go on my long speech. Oh, it's called Solo Leveling. It's actually a manhwa, which is a Korean manga, and it's really good. There's even talks about an anime being made, and they say that about a lot of manhwa, but we really think this was going to happen. Well, after multiple rumored release dates and multiple setbacks, it not only released, but has actually become sort of a sensation. So much so that the second season was actually announced with the release of the finale of season 1. Everyone was now talking about it and telling me about this exciting new anime that I just have to watch, and that meant I got to be the grouchy old man telling kids to get off of his front lawn because I was here before all of you. And so now that everyone knows what I'm talking about, I have some thoughts to share. The world of Solo Leveling is just one big game that nobody really got the full set of rules to. Every time we think, that's it, now we understand something, we receive a swift reminder that no we don't. The story starts with our protagonist, Sung Jin-Woo, arriving to a D-rank gate. Basically a few years prior, these portals began opening all around the world. They get bigger and bigger until they finally start spilling these otherworldly monsters out into the streets of your hometown. Not only that, but these monsters are also somehow impervious to modern weapons because magic. Look, okay, just go with it, alright? The only way to close these gates is to enter and clear the dungeon within, which happens to share a striking resemblance to a dungeon you might find in World of Warcraft or Diablo. Conveniently, around the same time, people around the world began having awakenings, where innate powers would develop within them, like healing, extra strength, or even fire control, just to name a few. The catch here was that once you awaken your powers, you're basically stuck with them. You can never really improve them no matter how hard you train, the only exception being reawakenings, and this allows you to advance a few ranks of strength, but these are few and far between. Speaking of ranks, in this modern world, they've created devices to rate the levels of magic present in people, monsters, and gates. There are then ranges of magic that are given an alphabetical rank between E, being the weakest, and S, being the strongest. Once you reach rank S, things tend to get a little blurry, as two S ranks can be in totally different leagues from each other, but they're both over that threshold of S rank. Our buddy Jin-Woo is a hunter, someone with awakened powers that clears out dungeons as a profession. They sell the gem cores you receive from killing the monsters inside. Unfortunately for him, he is not only an E rank, but also widely considered to be the weakest hunter with little to no talent. So much so that when people see him arrive to a gate, they are actually relieved because, and I quote, "If they let him come, then that means this must be a safe dungeon." After a few encounters, we see Jin-Woo suffer multiple serious injuries. Thankfully, they are also accompanied by a B-rank hunter named Ju-hee, who is a healer type, and she takes special care of Jin-Woo, who can't seem to stay safe anywhere he goes. When they notice nothing seems to change after defeating the final area, they discover an odd continuation of the dungeon. After a close vote, they decide to venture deeper into the dungeon, stumbling upon a large, ominous room littered with stone statues. The Double Dungeon. There's one giant, especially creepy statue in the center of the room on an equally giant throne, and nearby is a stone tablet with commandments on it. Suddenly, the door slams shut, locking everyone into this room with no way out. One hunter decides to try and run over and reopen the doors, though this is where things take a turn for the worst. In an instant, this C-rank hunter is cleaved clean in half by one of the statues. Panic begins to fill the room. Jin-Woo, who is trying to stay calm, is starting to give in to the worry of the group. Then a beam of energy rips through the center of the group, melting stone and people alike. Jin-Woo and Ju-hee survive, thankfully, due to quick reflexes, but are at a complete loss. This is when Jin-Woo notices that when anybody moves, the statue begins to charge its attack. They see one of the hunters, who does not take this as seriously, try to sprint towards the door, as speed is his specialty. This does not end well for him. He remembers the tablets and begins to form a plan. First, revere God. Jin-Woo, thinking quickly on his feet, tells everyone they need to bow down to the statue in reverence. After a moment of the rest of the group bowing down before the statue, it seems to reset and no longer be watching for their movement. The feeling of relief is short-lived when the statue begins to stand up and walk towards the group. Second, praise God. Jin-Woo struggles to find the answer for this one. A nameless hunter in the group decides to try reciting prayers of worship to the god, in this case being the statue. The statue seems amused and raises up its big stony foot too. This is when our protagonist finds a pattern. Most of these statues have weapons and seem to attack people given the opportunity, but some of them also have instruments. Okay, got it. He instructs everyone to make their way to a statue that's holding an instrument. As hunters begin arriving to these statues, the statue will actually light up and begin emitting the sound of their instrument. And as they do, the statue turns away from targeting them. Jin-Woo prioritizes getting Juhi and himself to one of these statues, but it doesn't seem to come to life, and it dawns on him. One person per statue. He decides to leave Juhi there in safety and dashes to the last open statue. The giant statue in the center of the room has been chasing him this whole time and is starting to catch up. You don't realize how fast tall people walk until one is trying to crush you. He's just out of reach of one and he finally dives to safety, and it only cost him his leg. Thankfully, the statue did activate and saves him from any further harm. Third, prove your faith to God. The meaning of the last commandment becomes obvious to everyone when an altar erupts in the center of the room. Sacrifice. Chi-Yul, the leader of the party, is essentially voluntold to approach the altar. As he does, a lone orange flame flickers into existence. Jin-Woo, watching this, wants to take a closer look to examine the altar, so he enlists two of the other hunters to carry him over. Once they pass over the threshold, 3 more orange flames appear around the circle. Jin-Woo calls everyone to the center. As the last orange flame appears, they are surrounded by orbs of blue flames on the outer rim of the circle. The doors finally reopen, and then the statues begin marching towards the altar. Jin-Woo believes you must have faith and notices that if you look at the statues, they stop moving. This sounds a little familiar. If you survive until the blue flames run out, then you will be saved. Easy. But it doesn't take long for people to begin losing faith and running to the exit one by one. Each person who exits the door closes the door a little more. They realize they are being timed by the blue flames, leading some to think one person must be left as a sacrifice. After the third person leaves, Jin-Woo makes the call to be that sacrifice, as they won't be able to keep the statues back long enough. Chi-Yul follows Jin-Woo's direction and takes Juhi and escapes from the room. As the doors slam shut and all orange light leaves the room, Jin-Woo is then violently ripped to shreds by the statues as they reach the altar. He is cut apart, flipped around, and slammed onto the altar. As the final blow from one of the statues is about to land, he's given an option. Be given another chance and partake in the system, or, well, have his heart stop. He takes his chance and wakes up in the hospital, days later. He seems to not be missing an arm or a leg anymore, and is alive and well. Jin-Woo becomes accustomed to the system that he now has to deal with, and starts to improve himself with his daily required exercise. Once he hits a certain level, he unlocks an instanced dungeon. He quickly finds out that fighting through this dungeon is one of the best ways to rank up, as each level he gets raises each of his stats by 1. After a long fight with the boss of the dungeon, a giant snake with scales of armor, he exits the dungeon only to be cornered by a soldier, telling him he shouldn't be in the area after a dungeon break. The soldier realizes that Jin-Woo is a hunter and actually starts to escort him to the site of the dungeon break. Jin-Woo's story starts to come to a head here when he comes upon the group of low-rank hunters at a stalemate with a B-rank creature from the dungeon break. Jin-Woo takes a chance and throws his broken sword at the giant monster, and to his surprise, is enough to destroy the shield of the monster. The monster that weeks ago would have obliterated him without a second thought. This scene shows us just how much he has improved in such a short period of time. Following these events, he goes on a few raids, meets some new people, and gets in a few fights that are a little less relevant to the point I'm making here, but important to the overall narrative. The next important event is at level 40 when he makes it to the job change quest. He fights his way to the end of the dungeon to battle the boss, Blood Red Commander Igris. This is a long and grueling battle, pushing Jin-Woo to his absolute limits. But in the end, he outmaneuvers Igris and comes out on top. He is then tasked to survive. The longer he survives, the better the job change he'll receive. After surviving countless waves of enemies and also being forced into a daily exercise punishment, and then coming back and surviving even more, he finally unlocks his job change. And while hoping for a warrior or an assassin, he unlocks Necromancer. Now, Necromancers are one of my favorite fantasy archetypes, so this is a very hype moment to read this panel for the first time. This is also the start of a huge conflict in Jin-Woo's character. Does he give up all of the progress on his stats that he has made so far, and all of his personal accomplishments, for this power that intrinsically forces him to rely on others? It's a difficult choice, but he remembers all of the strong hunters that he looks up to, and remembers that they all have unique abilities, and this is his chance to also have a unique ability. While he is temporarily upset that he didn't get a more martial job, he begins to summon the souls of some of the infantry that just moments ago he tore through, and he starts to see the potential. And then we get one of the most memorable scenes in the early parts of solo leveling as he raises Igris, that he just got done fighting, back to life. This is where he begins to realize that working with others through his summons could be a key to strength. And keep in mind, these summons are not just mindless zombies under his control, and while they do take his orders and fight for him, a lot of them have personalities and likes and dislikes. Some of these summons even show moments of emotion throughout the story. The larger his army grows throughout the story, the stronger, in turn, Jin-Woo grows. He progresses by learning to see the differences in himself and others, and work together through those differences. He has to learn to complement each other's strengths and abilities. Sung Jin-Woo, who had always had to rely on the strength of others, was now able to exceed and surpass them and rely on his own strength, only to find out that his true strength would only be unlocked by working with others. This isn't just a story about Sung Jin-Woo leveling up. It's a story about having to find strength in yourself so that you can truly benefit from the strength of others. It's like the old saying, you can't really love someone else until you love yourself. This is no longer solo leveling.